Namaskar. Welcome to this session. We are dealing with Pratyahara, the fifth limb in Ashtanga Yoga. And we had just considered the definition that Patanjali has given. Therein he mentions Chitta Swarupanukara Iva Indriyanam, Chitta Swarupam. The Indriyas are not in complete disengagement, but they are in disengagement with their usual business activity of engagement with the objects, empirical objects, sensory objects. So, they are not totally disengaged. They are disengaged with their usual business activity. And where is the engagement? The engagement with Chitta Swarupa. Because the Indriyas follow the Chitta Swarupam. Therefore, Chitta Swarupa Anukaratvam. Chitta Rupanukaratvam. Rupanukaratvam. Chitta Swarupam. What is Chitta Swarupam? Is something that we need to open out the concept of it. The Chitta is muddy substance because all the time it is getting colorized by our Vaasanas, by our tendencies, by our karmas, by our activities, by our allurements, by our states of mind. So the Chitta is all the time colored. It is murky, it is muddy. So the Chitta Swarupam is its absolutely nirmala, namarupatita, nirupadhika, Swatcha. That is Swarupam. The Chitta Swarupam is that it is Swatcha, nirmala, nirupatita, namarupatita, nirupadhika. It is not delimited, it is not influenced by all these aspects with which it is always afflicted, infected. So, the Chitta in its essential form is without delimitations. And in Pratyahara, the senses are therefore able to go after the Chitta Swarupam. And the Chitta in its essential form, the senses are able to get engaged with the Chitta Swarupam. Otherwise, the senses are Vishayakara, the senses are Chittakara, because the objects can be outside you, objects can be inside you. So when the objects are inside you, the Chitta is tainted by them, dented by them. When the objects are outside you, again the Chitta is dented by them, tainted by them. So, Pratyahara Purva, that means before Pratyahara, there has to be something whereby the Chitta gets or establishes in its Swarupam, which is transparent, which is Nirupadhika, Namarupatita. It doesn't have name and forms. No forms are in the Chitta. Imagine if there is no form in the Chitta, no name in the Chitta would be transparent, like a crystal. So the crystal form of the Chitta is the Swarupam. That is its Swarupam. And it happens only by Rajo Tamo Malapasaranam. When the Rajo Tamo Gunas are shown outgate, this is because of the pranayam. And that is why Patanjali brings Pratyahara after pranayam. Because the pranayam can be a purificatory act par excellence. So it can effect exodus of Rajo Tamo Gunas and their functions and their gunas. And therefore the Chitta can attain Swarupa. And now the senses are able to get engaged with the Chitta Swarupa. And that is why Patanjali says Chitta Swarupanukara ivai indriyanam. So the Chitta is like Ganga and Gangotri. That is its Swarupa. So it is Paaradarshika, it is transparent, it is Patikavat, it's like crystal. And then Indriyas are getting engaged with that. Not that the senses are disengaged absolutely in Pratyahara, but they are engaged with the Chitta Swarupam. And therefore, what we are going to now discuss becomes more important. The Pratyahara gets mentioned in Patanjali's text after pranayam. So it has come pranayamottara. It has come after pranayam. And therefore it has a special purport. By pranayam, the body, mind, antakaranam, body organs, mind organs, internal organs, indriyas, and even the chitta have a unique parinama, parishkara, what is called chitta parikarma, which we discussed in the first chapter of the Yoga Sutras. So, pranayam has this magic that the Rajo Tamo Gunas will be inhibited from entire embodiment. The body has Rajo Tamo Gunas, mind has Rajo Tamo Gunas, Indriyas have Rajo Tamo Gunas, Chitta has Rajo Tamo Gunas. So everywhere there will be rarification of Rajo Tamo Gunas. And therefore there will be sattva profusion in body organs, mind organs, in senses, in chitta. That is why pranayam gets a seat ahead of pratyahara in Ashtanga Yoga. So with pranayam, the mindness and the I-ness are sublimated. That is called divyikaranam, sublimation, transfiguration. So there is transfiguration of me and mine. Not that the me and mine are absent, but there is transfiguration, ennoblement of me and mine. And because of this, which is underlying aspect in the senses also get sublimated, transmuted, transfigured. And when the senses are transfigured, they give up Vishaya Abhimukhata, they give up Vishaya Nimnata, and they get Atma Bhimukhata. And that's how they go self-worldly. Senses go self-worldly. So pranayam has that magic. And therefore pranayam gets a seat before pratyahara in Ashtanga Yoga. And pratyahara follows pranayam. In our awakeful state, the senses will always go in search of objects. They always reside in objects. They always contain objects. They always have gravity of objects. They are always drawn towards the object. The objects are always drawn towards indriyas. And at the most there will be vishayantaranam, from one object to another object. The senses will move and the mind will move. So that is what happens in Jagrata Avastha. It is very, very, very rare that Indriyas are nirvishaya in a wakeful state. They will be always savishaya. They will be always in the gravity of objects. They will be always having engagement with objects. They will always contain objects as their contents. But the senses won't become nirvishayaka in a wakeful state. So let me tell you here, like a baby, an infant. The moment the baby has come to a wakeful state, it starts immediately moving the limbs. The baby is static in a place, but when it comes to a wakeful state, it invariably starts moving the limbs. And the limbs will not cease from activity unless the baby has gone to sleep. So, similarly, indriyas are never nirashrita with objects. They will always be taking recourse to some or the other object. They will be always engaged with some or the other object. So in Jagrata Avastha, you have external objects. The external stimulation of Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. And in Swapna Avastha, there is internal stimulation. But in Yoga Avastha, the supports are Abhyantara and Adhyatmika for the senses. It is not that senses are inactive in a yogic state. They are active, but their supports are Adhyatmika Abhyantara. And in this condition, there is that ethos whereby sublimity engulfs the entire embodiment, body, mind, senses. The sublimity engulfs, and there is transfiguration. And this condition is given by pranayama in an exalted way. So in pranayama, the supports of our consciousness are nirmala. That means without any mala, without any defect, without any dirt, without any taint, without any flaw. Vigata mala. So without any flaw. Spatikavata, that is like crystal, immaculate crystal. The Chitta is like immaculate crystal. And the prana avalambanam, tattva avalambanam, prana tattva avalambanam of pranayam does this magic. This uncomparable udattikaranam, sublimation. And therefore the indriyas easily go Chitta Swarupanukara. So the internalization in the realm of yoga, in the domain of yoga, stands out in that sense. Otherwise, the senses can never become transfigured, never get transfigured, cannot get transmuted, will not become udatta, their alambana will not become udatta, that is sublimated, and indriyas therefore won't get subjugated. So, indriyas are not nirashrita, they are not supportless, but they are parashrita. And para means this supreme aspect of sublimation. They are uchashrita. They are taking support of something that is noble, higher. Udattashrita. They are taking support of something that is udatta, sublime. Like a devout devotee, astika, devout devotee, bhavika, when enters the sanctum sanctorum of a shrine, he is soaked in bhavatit, transcendent pavitrya mangalya. So in pranayam, the chitta becomes this sanctum sanctorum, and the indriyas therefore are soaked in pavitrya and mangalya, auspiciousness and purity, piety. The indriyas are drawn towards this purity. It is because of that ethos created by the blanket of pranayam, and they are now not inclined to get engaged with the external objects. And therefore there is greater facilitation for antarmukhi, inwardliness, infacedness, internalization. So that is what we have to understand by Chitta Swarupanukara, and we have tried to open out that concept Chitta Swarupam, and how these indriyas are now gravitating towards Chitta Swarupam. So, Pratyahara, according to definition of Patanjali, there are two aspects. The indriyas have svavishaya asamprayogam. They are disengaged from their own objects, which are sensory objects in the form of shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha. So, Svavishaya asamprayogaha is an important aspect in the definition. And the second aspect is Chitta Swarupanukarata. And the definition beautifully covers these two aspects of Pratyahara. If you look at the definition, Svavishaya asamprayoge Chitta Swarupanukara ivai indriyanam Pratyaharaha. So these two factors of Pratyahara are to be noted. Svavishaya asamprayoga and Chitta Swarupanukaratvam. So that is how the Pratyahara stands out from dormancy. Because in dormancy also you will say, when it is a dreamless sleep, the mind stuff doesn't have any content in the form of objects. So the first factor of Pratyahara can be found in sleep, dreamless sleep. But the second is not significantly manifesting. So second aspect of Pratyahara will only manifest in what is called as Atmarati, one who is deeply engrossed or engulfed by Atma, Atmarati, or Bhagwanmayata, or Nirodhavastha. It only happens in these states. So Pratyahara will happen in Samadhi, Pratyahara will happen in Bhagwanmayata, Tanmayata, Bhagwanmayata, and in Atmarati. I recall that verse in Bhagavad Gita, Yastu Atmarati Syaiva. That verse, Atmarati. Rati is a marvelous poetic word. That means one is not only in contact with the Atma, but one is in a dating with Atma. One is dating with Atma, one who is, the Atma becomes beloved. And then when the one is engaged with beloved, na kaschin bahyaveda, na kaschit antarveda. One doesn't know outside and inside when one is engaged with one's beloved. That is Atmarati. So these two factors in Pratyahara must be understood as the second one greater than the first one. The first one is Kanishtha, the second one is Shrestha. Svavishaya Samprayogaha or Asamprayoga is Kanishtha and Chitta Swarupanukara is Shrestha. And pranayam does that. And that is why pranayam is so important for Pratyahara. Now it is also to be noted here that if you look into another text of yoga called Gheranda Samhita, in Gheranda Samhita you get the mention of Pratyahara first and pranayam later. This also has a purport, because so far we are trying to justify Patanjali's mention of Pratyahara posterior to pranayam. But Gheranda Rishi brings Pratyahara first and then pranayam. This also has a purport. Because to be going to pranayam, even Patanjali by implication is mentioning that, not explicitly, but implicitly. Because he says tato dvandvana bhighataha as a qualification, prerequisite for pranayam, and that is to some extent Pratyahara. So a question may come, why Patanjali says Yamaniyam Asan Pranayam Pratyahara, and why Gheranda says Asana Pratyahara Pranayam. He brings Pratyahara first. So both are justifiable and both are true, and Patanjali actually is mentioning both. There is a partial Pratyahara before pranayam and there is a full-fledged Pratyahara possible by pranayam. Now, the point is Atmaratavastha, Atmarati, Atmatrupti. These are all the predicates which comes in Bhagavad Gita. It is best possible by Ishta Devata Alambanam, Ishwaravalambanam, Bhagwan Alambanam, Bhagavad Alambanam, Atmavalambanam, and some Alambanam of metaphysical principles. So in Pratyahara, this also should be deduced. It is not just disengaging the senses. Senses must be engaged with sublime, transcendent, metaphysical principle. Ishta Devata, personal deity, or Ishvara, or Atma, Paramatma, Bhagavan. So there is engagement. So, Parabhautiki Alambanam, metaphysical Alambanam, Atita Bhautiki Alambanam is implied in Pratyahara. And we discussed during pranayam Jeshta Shrestha Vasishtha Tattva. Pran is such Tattva, and therefore there is Pranavalambanam. And you will also recall that in Vairagya Sutra, the sutra was Param Drushtva Nivartante as given by Bhagavad Gita. So seeing the higher, the desire for lower goes away, and these are the higher principles. So in Pratyahara it implies that you must take recourse to higher principles, sublime principles, transcendent principles, and not just try to shun the senses. So the classical principle of Vairagya can be also seen in Pratyahara. Then only Svavishaya Asamprayoga will take place. You cannot benumb the senses and close their gates. Then they have internal objects knocking the door from inside. If from outside the objects are not able to knock the door, objects can knock the door from inside. So therefore there is something like Shvasana Tantra, Prana Tantra, Dhyana Tantra, and taking support of esoteric anatomy, esoteric aspects of senses. This works wonderfully well for entering the realm of sublime, and therefore the Pratyahara is facilitated of the nature of Svavishaya Asamprayoga. And then Yoga Tantra has so many techniques. It takes recourse to esoteric physiology, and then there are so many technical aspects to tackle them. Even with respect to senses, the yoga technology mentions certain things, and you should recall the sensory kriya, sensely kriya that we discussed during asanas. Then also there are something called Shanmukhi Mudra for all the senses, Nasagra Drushti for eyes, Bhrumadhya Drushti for eyes, Shambhavi Mudra. All these are aspects of yoga technology. And for you to recall, we had discussed something like Netra Mula Drushti, Netragra Drushti, or the awareness at the bottom of the eyes, awareness at the outer edge of the eyes, inner edge of the eyes, top of the eyes, center of the eyes. So also fore ear, hind ear, bottom ear, top ear, center ear. So also membrane nostril, septum nostril, gate nostril, floor nostril, etc. So these are indigenous processes to sublimate the mind. And that's how the Pratyahara can happen. So the ethos of yoga also helps develop these pratyaharic potentials. Say for example, a bewitching flower like rose, rather than looking at it with sensuality, one should look at the rose in a sublime state of mind and senses. So when there is a sensory act but no sensuality, now this is possible by the ethos of yoga. Or when you are on a hilltop or mountain top and you are able to sight some panoramic view, and suppose rose orchards is spreading quite a distance up to say horizon, how would we look at it? So yoga cultures our eyes, which comes handy for pratyahara. Or the moment you sight a rose flower, if you think of offering the rose to your guru, or in Deva Puja, in worship of your personal deity, how would we look at that flower? We won't look at it crazily. The moment you find a flower and you pluck it or you have it in your hand, but you think of offering that to your guru, revered guru or revered one, or you think of offering it to the deity, personal deity, how would we look at that rose? So that would be sublime way of looking at the rose. Not that you close your eyes, not that you don't see. You see the rose. So there are aspects of ethos which one develops in practicing yoga, and therefore the senses are qualified to go into pratyahara. So this is possible with regards to all the 5 sense organs, which you should recall we discussed while we were dealing with sensely acts, Aindriya Kriya in Ashtadasha Mahakriyas. So that would come handy for developing potentials for pratyahara. So also developing the religious consciousness in the mind, Bhagavad Bhakti, Bhagavad Anuraga, one would be sumptuously receive or generate potentials for sublimation. So the pratyahara should be looked at in that way, as to what all we can be doing for pratyahara by our ahar, vihar, achar, vichar, by our satsanga, sadhana sanga, shastra sanga. So I recall one of the texts commenting on Yoga Sutras, which is called Mani Prabha. He beautifully says, when the chitta is cultured by yamaniyamas and the whole ethos of yoga, then the indriyas have a typical kind of pranayama, transformation, and then that is pratyahara. So object worldliness is not the nature of the senses, that is the vritti of the senses. This should be understood. We think it is sensory tendency for senses to go off after objects. No, it is not a natural tendency. It is Vishaya Sakti, and it's a vritti, and it is not their Swarupa. Now, in order to understand senses around which the pratyahara is woven, the limb of pratyahara is woven around senses, we need to have little insight into the sensory structure, how the senses are structured, how the senses are constituted. And Patanjali will somewhere tell us about the Pancharupas. There are 5 forms of the senses, and this is of great importance to really understand what the senses are, how the senses are constituted. And in yogic process we work on those 5 forms of the senses. and not just work on the senses. There are 5 forms of the senses. So this lands us to discuss and understand the senses at a little deeper plane and with a greater depth. So that will be considering the pancharupas of the indriya, the 5 forms of indriyas. So that will come handy to really set up a process for sensory reformations, sensory culture. So we will be going to that aspect which Patanjali mentions in the 3rd chapter about the indriya rupas, pancharupas. So let's try to have a very preliminary understanding of 5 forms of the senses. But that is in the next session. Enough for the time being. Namaskar all of you.